peace, and you're like, I want that. Like, they're happy. I don't have that. That's very attractive. And so we need to be that person for everyone. We need to be Christ to people, because that's ultimately what they're seeing in us. They're seeing God. They're seeing Christ. And also through this example, leading by example, we need to show people that living the Christian life isn't boring. People see it, I call it rules versus relationships. So they see the rules, all the can'ts. You can't have sex at all. That's not true. You can't, you have to fast, you have to be sad, mass is boring, like all these like just can'ts. But we don't do this simply because we want to follow some rules. We do this because we want a relationship with God, because we're children of God and we want to be with him in the end, and we want to live a happy life. Like, no one wants to like believe in something that's a lie. No one wants to follow something that's going to make them unhappy. Like Justin said, we all have the desire for happiness. And that's what we're doing when we're living the Christian life. So portraying that in a positive way, not like, oh, mortification, like I'm walking around campus, like this is miserable. Like, what is that, So like walk around with joy, walk around and like tell people like how awesome it is to live a Christian life. Like, this isn't boring. This is like beautiful and awesome. So kind of dispel that, rules versus relationship. It's all about the relationship. It's not the rules. The rules help us to have a good relationship. Another example, we could think of a couple in love. They just got back from their honeymoon, and they're not thinking of all the can'ts. They're in love, and they're just like the big can, like the beauty of giving yourself to someone fully. That's like what our relationship with God is like. It's so beautiful. The beauty of the sacraments, the Pope talks about. And this is great just for our armor and equipping ourselves, but also just inviting people to come and join us in those sacraments. Give all yourselves a pat in the back. I think we're all very good. Do it. And inviting people to Mass, inviting people to TNS, inviting people to events where they could be around the sacraments, receive the sacraments, learn more about the sacraments. I think we're all very great at that. And it's just so necessary, especially the part of explaining the sacraments and kind of clearing up misconceptions. I had a great joy last semester, the TNS, where there was a penance service, just talking with a girl in my Bible study and just sharing with her, like, the beauty of the sacrament of confession. She had all the typical excuses, like, oh, I could confess my sins straight to God. This isn't biblical. The priest is just another human being, and he sins, in fact, and I don't know why I would have to tell him this. And actually, one time I went to confession, and he was really mean to me. All these things, which, are very valid, but I was just so excited to be able to share with her, like, how awesome the sacrament is, instead of just being like, well, yeah, we have to do it. There's nothing we can do. That's not what it is. It's beautiful. And, just like, once again, like, adapting and meeting her where she's at. I was like, I try and go once a month, and I'm still in line shaking in my pants. My heart's going 100 miles an hour. It's not any easier, but it's awesome because every month, I find myself kind of saying some of the same things, and it's like, okay, when am I going to, like, start working on some of these things? It's great accountability. It's great grace. It's like, we don't go into confession and just walk out like, oh, that was awful. We walk into confession filthy, dirty, disgusting, and we're wiped clean. Like, God gives us that. It's beautiful. So just explaining that to her. I encourage you guys, Sacrament of Confession, I think, is a popular one. The beauty of Mass, because Mass is seen as boring. Explaining that, like, what happens during the Mass. And so lastly, the Pope talks about the most important one, and the one that we most commonly use in focus, relational ministry, incarnational, just relationships, just personal contact, investment. Just through discipleship, we share our very lives with each other. We journey together. We share strengths, joys, struggles, everything. And so we could do this with people, in our Bible studies, in our classes. You may not call them like your focused disciple, but they're like your disciple, and you're helping them to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. Don't be afraid to like share like the Red Book with anyone. Like I once printed out like the section on prayer and just shared it with like 5 people in 1 week who, I don't think they're going to be leading Bible studies next semester, but it just helped them to like understand prayer, different methods, and just why it's important to pray in our lives. So don't be afraid to just, share any resources that you have. An important aspect of the personal contact is being non-judgmental and listening. Justin touched on this, but it's so great because some people really, people don't want to hear other people's problems. They feel like they're going to be judged, if they get vulnerable, if they share. But people really appreciate when you listen and when you're not judgmental. I had a girl last semester who just like bared her soul with me, like just like a past of just like just really sad things, self-mutilation, just all these things that she had been through. And like I was just, looking at her, trying to hold back tears because y'all know I'm sensitive. I was just like, but in the end, I was just eyes of sympathy, a heart of sympathy. And I was just like, God loves you. Like, I know you've been through all this stuff, but, know that he loves you. And in the end, I was shocked. She was like, thank you for not judging me. I was like, oh, like, that's so interesting. Like, yeah, maybe she's like shared that with people and, they were like, oh, that's kind of weird. So just being non-judgmental and listening. This is kind of fun. So I wasn't at the dance last night. I was at a banquet, an engineering banquet. And this dude, my friend named Leo, I've known him since my freshman year. We were in the summer program together. Really smart. He's a computer engineer, I think. And I had to fill out a card saying, like, who I was, when I graduated, and what I'm doing right now. And sure enough, at the bottom, I have Catholic missionary. Everybody else has, like, Accenture, W.O. Gore, all these companies that they're working for. I had Catholic missionary. And so he was like, you're a missionary? Like, what? And so he just, like, took it upon himself to just, like, not drill me, but just, like, say where he was at. And it was awesome. Like, he felt comfortable enough to kind of just tell me things. He read this book, which now I want to read, called The Language of God. Has anyone read that? Yeah. Yeah, awesome book. Like, he read that, and now he's like, okay, so maybe there is a God. Because he grew up Catholic and then kind of was Buddhist, and now he's not quite sure what he wants to believe, but he's more like agnostic, atheist. But this book just, definitely met him where he's at. Like, if I go back and read this book, like, it's going to be hard. It's because I'm more of like a feely person, and this is like kind of like a very analytical, more like factual. It's basically about how like science and religion don't contradict themselves. Like, they could go together. And so that really opened his eyes. And so, in the end, like, he's just blabbing away. He's like, well, what about this? What about that? What's the Catholic perspective? And so I gave him the Catholic perspective on suffering, just like on the spot, and just how, like, love is a choice and all these things, and how the condition of the world, the second part of the UR, like, sin has broken that relationship with God. That's why the world's all twisted and tainted. And suffering. And so in the end, he was just saying all these things, and I was just thoughtfully listening. We didn't make it like a debate or a battle or anything. And in the end, once again, I was surprised. He was like, thanks for listening. I was like, yeah. And I feel like just preparing for this talk this week helped me to like have a good encounter with him. I feel like 3 years ago, I'd have been like, but this, and this, like, what are you talking about, But like, people really want you to listen. People really appreciate that. Barehanded evangelization. Justin touched on that a little bit. And I know sometimes it has a negative connotation, with like the brother Micah's yelling out in the free speech zone. But that's not what it's all about. It's about sharing the gospel. And there are many ways that you could share the gospel with someone.